Okay, hello everyone, wherever you are around the world. Today we have a conversation with Gideon Levy. It's a little different than what we usually have, which is a simulation. Mr. Levy participated previously in one of our simulation. I think that he was positive about it, but we'll find out. But we're not having a simulation today. I'm going to have a very, very short introduction, and then I will remove the PowerPoint presentation from the screen, and we'll have a face-to-face meeting with Mr. Levy, and I will be asking him a few questions, and then we will open it up to for the audience to ask him questions as well. And for as long as he is willing to answer the question, we will stay on. We are at the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. My name is Joseph Avasar. You can reach me at josephavassar@gmail.com with your comments. We believe in the creation of a common government for the people of Israel and Palestine in the area of Israel, the West Bank, Gaza, 14 million people, a common government that would be created regardless of the Israeli government or the Palestinian government. And we believe that it is possible to create such a government with or without the consent of the Palestinian or the Israeli government, because the people of Israel and Palestine own their own lives and they're entitled to have a common government, and that government will be the only legitimate government in the area, because by definition, Israel is not the legitimate government of the entire area. The Palestinians are not the legitimate government, so a common government would be the only legitimate government if we are able to have an election that would include everyone. But we're not here to talk about our formula for peace. We're here to talk about Mr. Levy. Not to talk about him, to talk with him. Gideon Levy is a Haaretz columnist and a member of the newspaper's editorial board. He joined Haaretz in 1982 and spent 4 years as the newspaper's deputy editor. He published a series of articles entitled Twilight Zone, Life and Death Under the Israeli Occupation. Mr. Levy was the recipient of the Euromed Journalist Prize for 2008, the Leipzig Freedom Prize in 2001, the Israeli Journalist Union Prize in 1997, and the Israeli Human Rights Award for 1996. Last year, he received the Sokolov Award, which is considered to be the top journalism prize in Israel. So that it is clear, Mr. Levy is not a spokesperson for our plan. He participated in our simulation, but he had some agreements and some reservation, but he's not a spokesperson for the Israeli-Palestinian Confederation. I believe, and I'll ask him, I believe he believes in one state, not two state, but we'll find out his views on that issue as we progress. So that we know, we are conducting simulations and we're inviting different people with different points of views. Next time, we're going to have Professor Ian Lustig. He is a professor of political science in the political science department of the University of Pennsylvania. He will be joining us on October 16th of this year. Next, we will have May Pundak. She is a feminist lawyer and activist and social entrepreneur. She is actually a spokesperson for another confederation plan, which is called Land for All. It's a lot different than ours, and we will be discussing with her to see the differences and what's their vision for peace. We will have on November 13, Aaron David Miller, who is a former U.S. Department Middle East expert, analyst, and negotiator for many presidents, I think starting with, if I'm not mistaken, even probably with Clinton, starting with Clinton, and he served several presidents. And then we will have Mordechai Kedar. He is has a PhD from Bar-Ilan University. He will be with us on November 7th. He was a previous Israeli Defense Force military intelligence officer, specializing on issues of Islam. I believe he's very much on the right side of Israeli politics, and he agreed to participate in our simulation. Like I said, we're inviting people with all points of views to stress test our Confederation plan. And then we will have Sherry Four. She's an associate professor of religion here in the United States. So that's our next simulation. I would very much appreciate if you can sign up. And now we are going to speak to Mr. Levy. And thank you so much, Mr. Levy, for joining us. I want to ask you, I'll go right to the issue, which is, in your opinion, is Israel the solution or is Israel the problem?
Thank you very much for having me again. I'm full of admiration for people who are so involved and so curious and so knowledgeable, who continue to look for a solution. I wish this would be the case in Israel, but as part of you know, in Israel, this whole issue is even not discussed. It's off the table. Nobody cares about it. Nobody deals with it. If you ask any average Israeli, where are we going to? Where do you want us to go to? You will hardly get an answer. Now to your question, Mr. Avissar. Israel was a solution for my father, for example, who was not a Zionist, but he was a refugee who was half a year on an illegal boat in the Mediterranean, detained in Beirut on his way from Europe to some rescue place, and Israel was for him the solution. Right now, things changed, and Israel as it is today, namely with an apartheid system, and I guess we'll talk about it later, obviously is an obstacle for achieving any kind of justice. So there is not one answer to your question. It was a solution, it is a problem.
Does it want peace?
Sorry?
Does Israel want peace?
No. I mean, Israel wants peace in Israel's terms, obviously. Who is against peace? I mean, that's very lovely to be in favor of peace. Ask in a different way, is Israel, because I think really we should concentrate on achieving justice, not achieving peace. Peace will be the outcome of justice. Does Israel want to achieve justice? By all means not, because justice contradicts Israel's interests. If you ask me if Israel had ever wished to put an end to the occupation, to have real equal relations with the Palestinians, no, never. And we were misled by many years. I am the best example. I believe, for example, that the Oslo Accords were a great achievement and a great step toward peace. When I look backwards, I understand it was a trap. When I look backwards, I am totally convinced that Israel never had the slightest intention for enabling the Palestinians to determine their self-definition, or mainly to have their own state. Israel never meant it. And in other words, Israel never meant to have a just solution.
So what would be a just solution in your opinion?
There are only two solutions, just solutions. The question is only what can be achieved, what is achievable. We are dealing with two peoples who are struggling over one piece of land. both peoples have quite good reasons for their struggle, and we will not get into it now, because now it's a fact. There are two peoples sharing this land, and in a very rare moment in history, we are also dealing with two peoples almost the same size. We are dealing now with about 7 million Jews and 7 million Palestinians of all kinds between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean. A solution can be one of two, either the two-state solution or the one-state solution. There is no other solution. It was very logical and just to share the land between the two peoples in a quite just way. There will never be total justice, but a relative justice, some kind of justice. But those who speak today about the two-state solution are misleading us, are cheating themselves. I think almost all the participants who believe in the two-state solution, the EU, the United States, the PA, and Israel, some Israelis, I think all of them know deep in their heart that this train left long time ago the station and will never be back. With 700,000 Jewish settlers in the West Bank, there is no option of a viable Palestinian state. We have to realize it. The settlements came to the world with one intention: to prevent the two-state solution, and we have to admit they succeeded, they won. There is no possibility of a two-state solution. Anyone who has doubts about it is kindly invited to come to the West Bank. I think after 15 minutes of driving through the West Bank, nobody can still believe in the two-state solution when you see the reality on the ground.
Yeah, I can attest to that. I've seen it with my own eyes.
So you know, Mr. Avissar, that you cannot drive more than 5 or 10 minutes in the West Bank without approaching a settlement. And knowing Israel politics, you should know that the settlers are the strongest political group in Israel. And to have a fantasy that anyone will be able to evacuate all of them is living in not in a reality, in a dream or in a nightmare. But this will not happen. Now, without evacuation of those 700,000 settlers, we don't have even a beginning of justice. All those solutions of evacuating part of them and exchanging territories and building bridges and tunnels, this will not lead to a viable state. When I spoke about the two-state solution, I spoke about two equal states. Even the idea of demilitarized state is really unacceptable. Why should the Palestinian be demilitarized? Is Israel demilitarized? Why should they be demilitarized? But all those things are irrelevant anymore, because, as I say, there is no option for the two-state solution.
So I understand, based on what I read recently, that you support one state. And the question to you is, do you support one state? How do you anticipate, how do you plan getting into one state, which in my mind, in order to have one state, you need to have one government, which would include the dismantling of the Israeli government, the Palestinian governments. And just on a side note, I got an email yesterday from a friend of mine who was a high-ranking Israeli military person, and he said, well, why are you inviting Gideon Levy? He is supporter of Netanyahu. So could you put this whole issues, could you answer all of these issues in one response?
So first of all, when I listen to you, I tell myself all this was achieved. We have already one state and we have one government. The only problem is that this government is an apartheid government. But between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean, there is one state and one government. The only problem is that this is an apartheid government. But when we talk about the one-state solution, we have to remember the one state exists already 55 years, ever since 67. It's one state under one government. When Mahmoud Abbas wants to leave his palace or his office in Ramallah and wants to go to a neighbor city in the West Bank, he needs permission from the government of Israel. This is his government, or from the army of Israel, which is his army. So there is one state, there is one government. It is an apartheid government, and therefore it is an apartheid state. And now what is at stake is changing the regime. It's not creating a one state, it's turning an apartheid state into a democracy. This is the great challenge, and that's the great and the only hope for justice.
So is it true that you support Netanyahu, or are you supporting him because you hope that he would expedite the destruction of the Israeli government?
Neither nor. My support of Netanyahu is mainly aimed against the other camp, the Zionist left of Israel, who carries the biggest responsibility for the occupation, for the settlements, for the apartheid. It's not Netanyahu who created all those. It is labor, it is the Zionist left, and they want to enjoy all worlds. They want everything. They want to be perceived as liberals, as leftists, and in the same time, they did nothing to put an end to the occupation, and they did everything to strengthen it and to make it irreversible. Now, this camp all of a sudden find itself in a total vacuum. They have nothing to offer, neither personally, not ideologically. No leadership, no ideology. And then they found themselves a trick. Let's hate Netanyahu. Let's make Netanyahu the great demon. And if Netanyahu is this great demon, so we are the hope. So we stand for something else. So we are really the good Israelis vis-a-vis those bad Israelis who are voting Netanyahu. With this, I couldn't live. Because in my view, the Zionist left has no advantages over the right in Israel. Netanyahu is not any worse than any of the Zionist left potential leaders. And therefore I decided that I will not join this game of demonizing Netanyahu in order to show how beautiful we are. I'm not in it. Netanyahu has some advantages and many disadvantages. He did few good things and many bad things, as did the former prime ministers of Israel who were labor. I don't think that Nobel Prize winner Shimon Peres did more for peace or for ending the occupation than Netanyahu. On the contrary, he's much more responsible as a founding father of the settlements project. And therefore, my so-called support to Netanyahu is not a support to Netanyahu. It's a call for the Zionist left to stop the hypocrisy. And yes, I pay a price because in this camp, who might be much more aggressive than the right-wingers, if you dare to say one good thing about Netanyahu, they forget anything else. They will approach you as if you joined, I don't know what, the enemy, you are a traitor, as if I raped somebody. You cannot say in this camp anything in favor of Netanyahu or against this camp. And for me, the problem of Israel is much more the Zionist left than the right.
So you're basically saying that the Israeli left does not have a higher morality stand than the Israeli right. But are you saying that they are both immoral, or is one more moral than the other?
No, there is no more moral. The only question is, do you prefer hypocrisy over a shameful truth? I don't know which one I prefer. The leftists try to mislead us with hypocrisy. The right-wingers are much more honest. They say, yes, we are racist. Yes, we are nationalist. Yes, there is Jewish supremacy here. And the left wing, the Zionist left tries to cover it up. For me, I prefer the honest ones.
So in the last 2 years, 5 governments, Israeli governments, have collapsed. And Israel referred to it as 5 elections, but the reality is that 5 governments have collapsed.
The 6th is on its way.
Yes. So the question is there a serious problem with the issue of a Jewish state, and is that being demonstrated by the fact that there are government upon government is collapsing, or is this some sort of a technical issue in the Israeli system, or is it more serious?
No, it's. I wish it was about the Jewish state, but it's not. It is only about one person, Benjamin Netanyahu. As long as he is around, there is no solution, because many right-wingers wouldn't go with him. I mean, let's face it, the vast majority, the big majority of Israel is right-wing today. The left is very, very small. Even the Zionist left is very, very small. The only issue at stake is Netanyahu, yes or no. That's the only issue on the table. And everything is according to this. Therefore, it is so hollow, because it's all about the fate of one person. Now, as long as Netanyahu is around, we will be stuck with it. And there will be a 6th government and maybe a 7th government. There will not be a solution, because those who are in favor of Netanyahu are exaggerating in the admire to him, and they will never leave him. And those who are against him are exaggerating in demonizing him and will never go with him. And this is a deadlock.
So it doesn't sound like you support Netanyahu. It sounds like you are just supporting it in order to instigate the left on Israel.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I supported certain things. When he did 1 or 2 good things, I dare to say that, and above all, I say, he is not worse than the left. Stop thinking that he is so much worse than your leaders.
A lot of our audience come from the United States. So I want to ask you about the so-called U.S. support for Israel. The U.S. believes in equal protection, in separation between church and state, meaning no relation between government and religion. It believes in the Constitution. It believes in due process. So is that inconsistent with its support for a Jewish state? In other words, does the U.S. really support Israel, or is the U.S. just giving arms to Israel in order to fulfill its own interest?
I want to answer you with a question. If you have a friend or a relative who is drug addicted, are you a friend of him or her when you support him with more money to buy more drugs? Is it friendship? Is it love? Is it care?
Is the drug addict here, is Israel the drug addict?
Sure, Israel is the occupation addict, and the United States is supplying Israel for its own reasons and its own interest, just more money to buy more drugs.
So why is Why is the United States doing it? Why is it giving more free military equipment to Israel for the last 20 or 30 years with a commitment for free weapons in the next several years?
It's much more than this. Don't eliminate it only to weapons. Can you see one prime minister in the world who would dare to go to the Congress and speak against an acting American president? Can you see anyone, Prime Minister of the UK, of France, of Germany, can you foresee something like this happening? Only Israel and only an Israeli Prime Minister can afford himself to do so and not to pay any price, by the way. Look, the relations, and by the way, we have the same problem in Europe. It's not only about the United States. In Europe, it's due to other reasons, but Europe is as paralyzed as the United States when it comes to Israel. You should explain me, how is it that when Russia invades Crimea, within weeks, there are sanctions? Russia. Israel is occupying the West Bank and Gaza for 55 years, and nobody dares even to mention the word sanctions. How can it be? How can it be that Israel can practically do whatever it wants when it comes to the occupation? The United States might condemn it, the EU might condemn it, but no price will be, no price tag for anything Israel is doing.
And the answer is, how could it be? What's the answer?
You know it better than I. It's a combination of answers. It's yes, it is the unbelievable power of the Jewish lobby, as you all know. It is maybe the most powerful political lobby in Washington. It goes back to the Holocaust when it gets to Europe, much less in the United States, but in Europe it is still very, very dominant. Guilt feelings and other feelings, part of them justified, part of them manipulated by Israel, but it is. It's a very, very sophisticated way of the propaganda of the Jewish lobby and the state of Israel to present the occupier as a victim, to speak about security of one of the strongest states in the world, with one of the most equipped armies in the world, and we keep on talking about the security of Israel, never mentioning the security of the Palestinians, who are totally helpless, but totally helpless. Nobody protects the Palestinians, but the world is preoccupied with the security of Israel. It's a long process in which Israel, in a very sophisticated way, together with the Jewish lobby, together with very influential American Jews, we cannot deny it. I know it sounds terrible, but we cannot deny that there is a lot of power which is in pro-Israeli hands. Try to become a congressman and speak against Israel. You know it better than I.
Right.
Try.
Yeah. So Israel opposes Iran, which is a much, much bigger country with much larger population, a country with a lot more resources. Israel opposes it from having nuclear weapons, but Israel itself has nuclear weapons since the 50s. What is the justification for Israel to be so aggressive in its opposition to Iran, where it seems to me Iran will have at least as much justification as Israel to have nuclear power or nuclear weapons?
What is the right of Israel to declare 2 days ago that they will never recognize the annexations of Russia in Ukraine? What's the difference between the annexation of certain districts in Ukraine than the annexation of the Golan Heights from Syria? What's the difference? Why Israel has the right at all to say anything about occupation or about annexation? Israel created a situation with a lot of sophistication in which there are certain things which are allowed to Israel and are not allowed to any other country. Israel created a situation in which the international law is something that should be respected, and all should respect the international law, except of one case, Israel. Because we are different, because we are always the victims, because we are the chosen people, and because nobody can tell us what to do after the Holocaust. It's a combination of many, many sentiments and interests. And unfortunately, the United States is following it almost blindly. You know, Mr. Avissar, many times when I look at the relations between the United States and Israel, I really ask myself, which one is the real superpower between the two? It's really an open question. Who is leading whom? Who is blackmailing whom?
And the answer is?
You know the answer. Many cases, you get the feeling, unless the United States doesn't mean anything in what it asks. But the United States declares day and night that it is against the occupation, against settlements, in favor of the Palestinians and everything. And Israel just laughs, not to say spits, at the United States and does exactly the opposite. And it's okay with me when the United States is supporting Israel in a such broad way, like no other state in the world. But why not at least to condition it? Why not to put some conditions? Our interest is a Palestinian state. You will get everything, but at least listen to us once. No, this is not the case.
So I want to talk to you about the Israel is an apartheid state, about South Africa, and about BDS. A lot of the supporters of BDS believe that the solution is the duplication of South Africa, because South Africa was also an apartheid state, and therefore, if BDS is imposed on Israel, the same results would follow as it did in South Africa. What is your opinion? Why is Israel a apartheid state? What makes a difference between the Israeli apartheid and the South African apartheid? Is there a difference in the BDS against Israel and South Africa? And do you expect different results?
First of all, let's be honest. The BDS is the only game in town right now. We might like it, we might not, but that's the only game in town. Israel and Israelis don't pay any price for the occupation. As long as this is the case, don't expect any change from within Israel. Israelis will not wake up one shiny morning and say, oh, the occupation is not so nice, let's put an end to it. It will never happen. There is no incentive for it. And right now, Israel is not paying anything and not being punished and not accountable for anything. This must be clear. So the way to change it is by making Israel being punished, pay a price, political, economical, some kind of price, which will bring Israelis to ask themselves, do we want it at all? Because right now, most of Israel couldn't care less about the occupation. They don't care about it because their life is wonderful, and who cares what is happening half an hour away from our homes? Now, in a better world, the answer should be in the UN, in the United States, in the EU, in governments and international organizations who will do what they've done with South Africa, an established boycott which pushed the apartheid government in South Africa to surrender. because they couldn't take it anymore. It was about the business community who came to the government and told the government, we cannot take it anymore. It was about the sport, which is much more important in South Africa and more successful than in Israel, who couldn't continue in this isolation, and many other fields. This is not the case in Israel. Now, is Israel an apartheid state? I don't know any other definition for a situation in which you go to the West Bank, you see two villages, one has all the resources and all the rights, and the neighbor village has no resources and no rights. What else can you call it if not apartheid? I don't know another name for it. You know, I hosted some human rights activists from South Africa once in Israel, and all of them say that those are people who paid the price and stayed in jail, and some of them were injured. They said your apartheid is much worse than ours in many ways. Now, it's not identical. Those who say, oh, it's not apartheid like in South Africa, they are right. It's not apartheid like in South Africa. In South Africa, first of all, it was a small minority of 8-9% who controlled all the rest. In South Africa, it was legislated. There were laws, very clear laws. In Israel, it has a different form, but it is still apartheid in a different form. As long as we speak about Jewish supremacy, we are talking about apartheid. And what is Zionism today if not Jewish supremacy? And Jewish supremacy cannot lead to any other results but to apartheid, as long as there are two peoples, same in size, with the same size, under the same government.
Is there a little contradiction in what you're saying? Because on the one hand, you're saying that Israel, the world is, not literally, you're not literally saying it, but the world gives Israel a lot more leeway because of the guilt over the Holocaust. But on the other hand, why would there not be guilt about not imposing the BDS? In other words, if Israel is such a country that can do, based on some of what you're saying, it can almost do everything it wants, and including humiliate the president of the United States, why is BDS going to be stronger than the president of the United States, or stronger than the guilt feeling that the world has about the Holocaust?
First of all, practically it's not stronger, as you know, and BDS until now is a very successful idea, but it doesn't have really meaningful achievements in terms of economy or other boycotts. Culturally, Israelis don't feel the BDS. They are being told that BDS is a cloud in the sky which might bring a storm, but it never brought a storm. So BDS is not stronger than all those elements that you mentioned. But I want to pay your attention to another fact. BDS is not only not accepted, it is criminalized in most of the world, including your country. And this is unheard of. You know, in Europe and also in your country, BDS in many states is illegal. It is legal to boycott the sweat shops in Far East Asia. It is legal and appreciated to boycott the meat industry. It is legal to boycott Iran. And it's illegal to boycott a brutal occupying force. How can it be? And it is like this, both in Europe and in the United States. The idea was that what the governments cannot do, civil societies will be able to do. And they will push the governments, because finally we are dealing in kind of democracies in which I hoped that public opinion can have an influence. Until now, it didn't happen, even though I must tell you, are you with me?
I'm trying to understand, why is Israel, a nation with 9 million people, is able to have so much power in terms of political power, economic power, nuclear power, and influence all over the world? I mean, you know, you open the New York Times, you are much more likely to read about Israel than about many, many countries that are so much bigger than Israel and so much more powerful. Why is Israel so influential all over the world? Why is it so big?
The answer stays with you more than with me. I mean, the United States is maybe the main responsible to this. The United States enables it. Why does it enable it? I don't know. But without the umbrella of the United States, all this would be totally different. The support, you know, there are states who approach Israel in order to get some good contacts in Washington.
Right.
Unheard of. I travel quite often to Sweden. Sweden is a strong, developed, wonderful country. You think that the Prime Minister of Sweden can talk to the American president? I mean, only in really certain moments. So Israeli Prime Minister can talk to the American president almost at any time. But coming back to your question, Israel used another thing for this. I mean, this campaign over Iran is first of all aimed at preventing Iran of getting nuclear weapons. But it has also a side effect which is no less important. By this, Israel succeeds to put the Palestinian issue off the table again and again, because we are struggling now with Iran. What do you want us now to do with the Palestinians? We are struggling with Iran now, and the whole world is struggling with Iran. So you want us to deal now with the Palestinian? So by this, the Palestinian question, which is much more important than the Iranian question for the long run and for the short run, is totally off the table. It's not New York Times, it's not the Haaretz, it is the international discourse.
So I didn't get the answer. Why is the Haaretz why is it failing to really examine and have an expose on the various peace plans that are out there and could be implemented?
First of all, because it seems extremely irrelevant right now.
Well, in the last 75 years, it's irrelevant.
No. In the last 5 or 10 years, ever since the so-called peace camp collapsed, ever since the Palestinian issue was off the table, ever since Israel succeeded to prove the whole world that there is no Palestinian partner, ever since the occupation became a permanent phenomena and not a temporary one. And we should realize it. It's a permanent phenomenon, not a temporary one. But Haaretz, there is not one day without articles about finding solutions to the Palestinian problem more than in any other media in the world. The only problem is that it became so irrelevant because it's like whistling in the darkness.
Okay, I am going to open up questions. If you want to ask Mr. Levy a question, please let me. Let's have I'll have and I'll call your name, and we will. So, okay, let's start with John Mitchell. Charles Fredericks, Nasir, Ruth Edmonds, Avi Appelstein, and Omar Shaban. Let's start with John Mitchell.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, John.
Hi, Gideon. It's a great, I welcome your contribution today immensely. Absolutely brilliant speech and viewpoints. My question is this. Given the decades of Israel's military illegal occupation, what would you consider to be a legitimate form of resistance by the Palestinians against illegal occupation?
You're asking what is the legitimate way for the Palestinians to respond to the occupation?
Yeah, a legitimate form of resistance against the occupation.
Okay.
First of all, the international law. What is more than the international law?
Yeah, but
legitimizes armed resistance to the occupation.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't want the international law, take the Jewish history. Whatever the Jews did against the Brits was legitimate. Why isn't it legitimate? Whatever the Ukrainians are doing against Russia, and we are all applauding them, is legitimate here. No difference. I wish I could say I'm against bloodshed, I'm against violence, which I am. But you can't blame them for violence or for bloodshed or for terror. You can't blame them when the real terror is the occupation and the real responsible for all this is Israel. So, I don't want to draw lines because it sounds horrible, but yes, the Palestinians are in a situation in which they tried everything. They failed in everything, from diplomacy through legal campaigns, through political campaigns, until military resistance. Nothing brought them any achievements. And in this situation of despair, can I say that what they are doing is not legitimate? I can't say it. I know very well that what the Israeli army is doing is not legitimate by any criteria.
Okay, Charles Frederick, please.
Hi, thank you very much for being here. I've been impressed and followed your career for some time. My understanding of this issue has really expanded, and my feeling, the reason why Israel is so exceptional, gets away with so much on the international stage, you could say, stems from the fact that I think the current thing that we consider international law is basically the inheritance of colonial empires from Europe going back to the Portuguese all the way up through to the present. And this situation, I mean, the Jews have been the devil we know, as opposed to the Middle East and Asia, and therefore have been seen as, and are being used currently as, a soldier on the wall, so to speak. And this manipulation of the current geopolitical circumstance of the Western hegemon, if you will, positions Israel in this way, and therefore it's like that scene from A Few Good Men where he says, "You want me on that wall. You need me on that wall. You can't handle the truth." I mean, and I don't see how this is going to be resolved until we recognize that there has to be one system of justice around the world. There are no exceptions, and that means reordering basically our current economic situation geopolitically around the world, which we need to do to address climate change. Climate change is going to wipe us out while we're all arguing about these things. I want to get your reaction to that.
Mr. Levy, before you answer, I just want to read the order of the people who will be asking questions, and I'm going to be asking you, please ask the questions in a in a short way. So after Charles will be Nasir, Ruth, Avi Appelstein, Omar, Jesse, Walter, Isam, Olivia, Dawn, and Miriam. So So hopefully we'll get to all of you. Okay, Mr. Levy, please answer.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The real challenges of humanity are not right now in the Middle East. The real challenges are climate changes and immigration. And this will not play into the hands of justice, because I think that in the coming years, the Palestinian issue will be more and more, will become more and more marginal vis-a-vis those issues that you just mentioning, including economical changes. But finally, we are dealing with a people who is struggling for over 100 years now, and they deserve some attention. And therefore, with all the respect to those big issues, which are very, very big and crucial, I hope it will not overshadow the fact that we need to find a solution here, and this solution will be found only by putting pressure over Israel. There is no other way but putting pressure over Israel. But yeah, it's not very promising what you say, because I think that the Palestinians will be again the victims of all those developments to come that you just mentioned.
Okay, Nasir Abushi, please.
Shalom, Gideon. Shana tova lecha. I want to thank you. I'm a Palestinian and I'm a big fan. And you mentioned in your speech today something very important about the how the Israeli government is intentionally, I should say, not really seeking to establish a two-state solution, as you said in the early Oslo Accords. I read an article in 972 magazine. It was an interview of Akram Rajoub, who's the governor of Jenin, the Palestinian Authority governor of Jenin. And he mentioned something that's very important about how Israel is undermining the Palestinian Authority now by withholding funds so that they cannot pay their teachers, their civil servants, their security forces. While at the same time, people like the former Mossad head, Yossi Cohen, was sent to Qatar by Netanyahu in order to convince Qatar to continue the cash flow to Hamas. So Israel, in a sense, is bolstering Hamas while destabilizing the Palestinian Authority and turning the Palestinian Authority basically into a government that's basically fighting for survival rather than looking for a forward solution. So are Israelis aware of this? Is it something that's accepted? And in your opinion, is this just the same deliberate things that we've seen since Oslo to sabotage any type of peace solution?
It just proves what I said, unfortunately, because the PA was a potential partner. And if you try in any way to prevent any kind of solution, any kind of ending of the occupation, then you have to destroy it. Then you have to do anything possible to find an alternative who is objecting the two-state solution or any solution. And what is better than Hamas? And leaving Mahmoud Abbas, who is really totally finished by now, I wish him all good health, but he is not anymore a partner for anything, because Israel had done anything possible to neutralize him. And here he is, and it just proves what I said before. Israel has no intention, had no intention. Why should Israel go for a solution? What for? What's wrong in what's happening now? Life in Israel is wonderful. What's wrong? The occupation is a wonderful training field for Israeli army and Israel armed industry. Israel is selling arms all over the world because of the experience they have in the occupied territories. Why should all this end? What reason? And with the PA, there was a danger that it might come to its end. So let's go for Hamas.
All right. Let's go to Ruth. Ruth Edmonds, please.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, Gideon. Good to see you, sir. Chag Sameach. It's actually the first time I'm joining this group. Jeff Halper invited me, and I'm sorry I haven't been able to make it before, because I see that it's it's a wonderful thing that you're all doing. And thank you for your time. So I'll try and keep my questions short. Gideon, I live here, Palestine, Israel. I nickname it Pluto. And really my question is to Israeli activists, perhaps even more specifically the Israeli anti-Zionist left, what do you see as being the most urgent thing that we could focus on right now, that we could do right now here on the ground?
There are two things, one overseas and one here. Overseas, the pressure, especially in the United States, must be to create more awareness to the crimes, to create more awareness to the lack of legitimacy, to create awareness to all the lies that the West and Israelis are fed day and night. Because most of the Israelis don't really know what's going on. They don't care and they don't want to know. They don't want to know. But I'm sure that at least part of them, would they know, would they be more exposed? But the Israeli media, as you know, is the biggest collaborator with the occupation. And it's very hard to break through and to bring the truth, you know, on a daily basis. Fake news on a daily basis. They kill Shirin Abu Akleh and they say they didn't kill her. And most of the Israelis believe they didn't kill her.
Yeah.
And then when they say they killed her, so most of the Israelis are already so tired of it and they are sure they had no other choice. But that's just one example. It's very hard to, so one job is really to create more awareness. And the other one is, as little as we can do to give the Palestinians the feeling that they are not alone, because they are now more lonely than ever before.
Yeah.
All the Arab states betrayed them. The West betrayed them. The United States never was a hope for them. And they are all alone without any kind, not only of protection, but even no support anymore. So this is what I can see as two main roles.
Can I say one more thing, Yosef? Is it okay?
Sure.
Just to say, when I read a little bit in the comments, and I think you touched on it as well in terms of the lobbying in the US and also here that happens. And then it reminded me of the lobbying against tobacco companies back in the day, you know, when they, the lobbyists of tobacco companies in government and of oil companies, and how laws were able to change because of advocacy, because of campaigning, because of raising awareness. The news is saturated, we're all saturated, but yes, thank you.
All right,
Thank
Avi,
you. Thank you.
Avi Appelstein, please. Avi, hi, Avi.
Okay, I got it. Do you hear me? Yes, okay. Hi to everybody. Hello, Gideon. We've met already in this forum. You know that I'm on your side in many political things. I can tell you that I refused my reserve service and had to pay a high price for myself, and I left Israel. So in a lot of things, and I'm reading your articles and Amira's article, and I'm have the Haaretz anyway. But still, there are things that disturbing me. If you make a comparison between, for example, the West Bank or whatever, the occupied territories, and something like the situation in Ukraine, because they emerge from totally different places. And for my taste, it's just, or from my understanding, it's actually dangerous to make such an equivalent, which are basically not the same. Or the question from Joseph about Iran, the right of Iran to have an atom bomb, which have a very particular purpose for that, and the right of Israel, not the question of the right, but the fact that Israel have atom bomb, which means to do it, totally different things. And that's where I'm afraid. Also with BDS. This BDS is only concentrate on Israel and not, for example, on China or something like that, which have enough injustice there. I'm very sensitive to this kind of comparison, that I don't think that open the hearts of people, but more close them. And what do you think about it?
You see, there is this whataboutism. What about? And the Israelis use it a lot. If you criticize the Israeli army, so what about the Syrian army? And if you criticize the occupation, so what about the Muslims in China? Or it's endless. It's endless. Comparisons are here only to create attention, not to. You say that it's not effective, maybe, but you try to compare it to, for example, when you compare to South Africa, you compare to a success story, because South Africa is for us a model of hope. Nobody believed it will end like this, for sure not in the 90s. And it fall with relatively less bloodshed than anyone would expect. And South Africa, with all its problems, is much more of a just place today than it was in the 80s. No doubt about this. So you compare, because in South Africa, the world knew exactly what to do and how to do. Why can't it be implemented toward the second apartheid state? Why is it a difference? Or you speak about Ukraine. For the Russians, there is no Ukraine people, like for the Jews, there is no Palestinian people. For the Russians, Ukraine is part of their country. Like for the Israelis, the West Bank is part of their country. The motivations are very, very simple, at least the justification. So why not to compare when the whole world is preoccupied with Ukraine? I think it's very effective to remind the world that there is another occupation and another annexation which is totally forgotten.
Okay, let's go to Omar Shaban. Omar.
Very good evening to all of you. Thank you, Joseph, for this session. And I'm very pleased to meet with Levy. I appreciate it very much. I'm Omar from Gaza. I'm in Gaza now, and hope the electricity will continue for another 1 hour so I can listen to all of you. I am a peace active. I believe in peace, and I think I have been to the US speaking about everything. But I have witnessed the 4 wars, the 4 major wars, and 200 small wars. Israel blockade on Gaza has turned Gaza from a secular, mosaic, diversified society to 2 million of radical, frustrated society. Israel don't understand this is against their interest. And I agree with Gideon that we need to continue writing and talking every day. Yesterday I was with Washington Middle Institute Center. How the Israeli don't understand that the security military approach that has been there for 70 years didn't work. And we need to create economic interest and political interest. Palestinians have expressed their opinion that they want a peaceful, not armed Palestinian state. We need an airport. We need a seaport. We can do a lot of things. I'm sure the Israeli people themselves in the street and the Jews in America, they don't understand the reality. I don't want to speak about myself, but my 2 sons are in Europe. They could not come back. They were not related to any Hamas or any other. We are punished by somebody else's mistake. And the siege on Gaza has created bad situation in Gaza. Today, these days, we are witnessing a trigger of violence on the back of Jerusalem. Look to Jenin, look to Nablus. The Israel need to invest a little bit, 10% of what they invest in war, they need to invest in peace. And there's a lot of potential about coming together. I'm not here to make emotionally, but they need to understand their policy is very bad. I remember many Israelis were coming to Gaza, enjoy the life, enjoy the beach, enjoy the fish. I'm sure they like it. The new generation didn't know. So there's a huge potential of making peace. Just we need to alert the Israeli people about what can be together. We are not terrorists. I'm a peaceful person. I like life. I can leave Gaza tomorrow to America, but I want to stay here because we work with young people. And there are so many talented, not only in Gaza, but Gaza and West Bank, software developer, all means. We need to look, we need to educate the Israeli about what is the potential here. How to do it? I think the Israeli, the Palestinian, the Jews, and the Jewish in America need to come together to convince and to pressure to a leader. All the time I say somebody need to rescue Israel from itself. I do care about the stability in the region, but they need to understand in a simple word, things is not in the right direction. Just last statement, Joseph, for all of you. Gaza was mosaic, was rich. There was no any radical group in Gaza. Now the menu is full. The menu is full. I'm very brave enough to speak with you from Gaza because I believe in it and I believe in it. I want to stay. I want to travel. I'm able to travel because I'm 60 years old. But what about 65% of the Gaza young people who are under 30 who have never been outside? In which last statement, Mr. Gideon, and you can use this in the article, 37% of the Gaza population were born under siege. 37, 900,000 people. And another 900,000 people become adult under siege. In 10 years' time, when people like me pass away, the whole Gaza, 2 million or 3 million, will be a siege mentality society. With whom you are going to talk? And Gaza now is open, is a platform for everybody, starting from Malaysia, through Iran, through Hezbollah, through Syria, from everybody. And we are, the moderate one, are leaving, are diminishing, are disappearing. I will share with you some article that I wrote to the CNN in 2014 war when I was here for you to understand what's going on. Thank you very much.
Omar, you said something is full. I didn't understand. What was it that you said was full?
What's what?
You said something is full. I didn't understand the word you were saying before you said something was full.
When people like me in 10 years disappear, then the whole Gaza people, the 3 million people of Gaza will be siege mentality people. Because 2/3 of Gaza population now either born or become adult under siege. They have never been outside. They don't know how an American look like. Only the journalists who come to Gaza, but they don't know. We try through our organization, a small one, voluntarily, we try to connect young people with international who come to visit Gaza. They need recognition. They need understanding. They are peaceful one. They want to live in peace and they believe in peace from their heart.
Are you a journalist, Omar?
I am a political economic analyst, and I wrote article and I will share with you some of the article now.
All right, thank you.
My pleasure.
Gideon?
Yeah, my heart goes out to Gaza. If you offer me now one place in the world to visit, I will not hesitate for a moment. If I have one wish, it is to be in Gaza one more time. I traveled so many times to Gaza for so many years. And it's really very emotional for me to talk to people in Gaza, and above all, not to be able to get into Gaza because of Israel, by the way, for so many years. My last visit in Gaza was 15 years ago, and those were the 15 years of siege. And everything that Omar said, I agree to the last point, but we have to be more realistic. Education and changing the minds of the Israelis is very nice and very promising, but is not achievable right now. We had this time of hope in the 90s. You remember it, Omar. Those were the great days when Arafat came to Gaza, when there was really a feeling that the occupation come to its end. I remember one of my last visits in Gaza was opening a new hotel in northern Gaza next to the border. It was supposed to be the Club Med of Gaza. It was a Saturday, and we came in few buses, many celebrities from Israel, people who had never been in Gaza, but they promised us also that we can get directly to this hotel The opening was so beautiful, and there was food and drinks and everything. And a few weeks later, it all exploded. And it's very, very hard to turn this wheel backwards now by education. It will not, I don't believe in it. It sounds wonderful, but I think that first we need political, courageous steps. And the first step that should be taken before anything else, Ruth asked before, what can you help? The first step before anything else must be lifting the siege from Gaza. And this can any Israeli prime minister do at any given time. It's not a very complicated step, but for this you need international pressure to do so. And this what we lack, because it will not come from Israel. We need an American president who will tell the Israelis, tomorrow you open Gaza, tomorrow. And believe me, they will open it if there will be a decisive American president, which we never had. But that's the easiest now. I don't say it will solve everything. But lifting the siege must be the first step, because it is so easy to achieve. It can be controlled. Nobody says everything will be open. It will be controlled, but let those people live. And sure, Omar, what you say, Israel is going to pay a price for all this. And the new generation, also in the West Bank, by the way, is much more militant than the former generation. But when Israel is so strong, it's very hard to convince it to use another way.
Thank you. Let's go to Jesse Biven. Hi, Jesse. And after Jesse, it will be Walter, Robbie, and then Isam, Bitar, and then Olivia, and then Don, and then Miriam. Is it okay with you?
And then the morning will shine over Israel.
All right. Okay, Jesse, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Do you hear me?
Yeah,
I'm
we
here.
hear you, and we see you over the
Okay.
San Francisco Bridge.
Thank you. So my question is related to Zionism. I'm just to give you a brief background. Much of my family on my mother's side spoke Yiddish and immigrated to America during the Russian pogroms. The ones that did not, unfortunately, all perished during the Shoah, except for one cousin in Poland survived the concentration camp. So my struggle is, I've been fighting for peace between Israelis and Palestinians for a long time, and trying to work with many activists in California, and also on the internet, but in person in California. And something that comes up is they tell me that Zionism is Nazism, and that's and I struggle with those kinds of comments, and saying that I must reject all Zionism in order to be able to promote peace. And when I went to SF State, San Francisco State, I was told in Jewish Studies, this Jewish Studies department, that Zionism is very wide open when it comes to interpretation and what kinds of Zionism. So my question for you is, how can I work to, I kind of struggle with, am I a Zionist or am I not a Zionist? But I definitely am not a Nazi, and I wish for peace. So I don't know if you've come with this problem before. I'm very secular, but thank you so much.
You see, I'm not struggling anymore, but it took me many years to struggle, because you are raised in Israel in an atmosphere in which there's no possibility of being not Zionist. It's much worse than being not communist in Soviet Russia. It's out of the question. I mean, it's something that I can't even describe you how deep-rooted is Zionism in Israel, that any small doubts or question marks being raised immediately frame you as a traitor, as someone who doesn't belong here. So go away. If you're not a Zionist, go away. What do you mean if you're not a Zionist, go away? We have only one ideology. Finally, we have to remember Zionism is an ideology, not more, not less than this. It's not a religion. It's not only it is an ideology like many others. Some can support it, some can be against, not in Israel. It's an unprecedented phenomena, I think. I cannot recall one example in which one ideology is so dominant and any kind of question marks are met with so much aggression. So much aggression. I mean, it's really only someone who lives in Israel can understand what does it mean to say, I am not a Zionist. I mean, almost suicidal. So we have to ask ourselves, first of all, what is Zionism? What is Zionism today? And do we really support it? And if we do, wonderful. And if we don't, we should say it.
All right. Mr. Levy, do you need a break by any chance?
No, but we should put some kind of
Time limit. Okay.
exactly.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more questions. Is that okay?
Wonderful.
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. Let's go to Walter Ruby. Walter Ruby.
Yes, thank you so much. And I'm very, I just want to tell Gideon Levy that I just honor him so much for his courage, his integrity, and his honesty in all of this. And I know what he just said now just really elucidated that. Just a couple of very quick things. One is your condemnation or saying that, you know, liberal Zionism is pretty much the same as, it's no different than right-wing Zionism. It's, you know, I'm just curious in terms of your writing for, I think, what is a Zionist paper? They continue to publish you. So that's an interesting paradox right there, which I'd love you to elucidate on. The other point is coming back to Zionism. One thing that I've been thinking about a lot lately is, isn't Zionism technically dead, and didn't Israel itself kill it? You very persuasively pointed out that the destruction of the peace process was created by the putting 750,000 settlers in the West Bank and made it a two-state solution impossible. Without a two-state solution, you can't have a democratic Jewish state. So if then Israel over the last 50 years killed that dream, then doesn't that throw everything out the window? I mean, why do we even have to discuss Zionism if it's all pretty much over? And so anything you can give me on that, why is that not talked about? The idea that it was Israel itself that made decisions that basically put Zionism to rest.
Yeah,
Thank
as for Haaretz, yes, Haaretz declares itself as a Zionist paper, but above all, Haaretz is, in my view, one of the most liberal newspapers in the world in terms of letting total freedom of speech for its writers. It's not only that I can write whatever I want. Some of my articles were very, very damaging, Haaretz, in terms of subscriptions, advertisements, and never did anyone tell me anything. It's by far, you know, our publisher used to say, to tell people who would complain about me, he would tell them, okay, so maybe Haaretz is not a newspaper for you. I cannot think about one publisher who will answer a frustrated subscriber in this way. So this I cannot take for granted. I hope it will continue forever like this, but it is really a very liberal newspaper. As for your second question, look, the Israeli society is living in a total denial.
Mm-hmm.
And things that we speak here are totally not discussed in Israel. The Israelis still believe that it is possible, that Israel is a Jewish democratic state, that it is possible to be both Jewish and democratic in a binational state. They all believe that the IDF is the most moral army in the world. And all those assumptions, all those values are being amplified by the media day and night. And it's very hard to put any cracks in it. So for the ordinary Israeli, Zionism goes without saying. He would not ask himself at all, what does it mean being Zionist? You know, when a group of pupils are helping an old lady to cross the road, they will say, oh, what a Zionist step you did. When you go and help, I don't know what, disabled children, they say, oh, what a Zionist act. I mean, it's a very, very vague concept because there is no true and honest answer. What does it mean today, Zionism? And therefore, all those contradictions can live in peace one with the other. And the belief that we can be both democratic and Jewish, most of the Israelis still believe that this is possible, while it is a lie. Israel has to choose between the two. And by the way, if Israel will have to choose, no doubt what will be the choice of Israel, of the majority of Israelis. They will choose Jewish over democratic state without any doubts at all, with a very big majority. But right now, they don't even have to choose.
All right, let's go to Issam Bijar. Please, Issam.
Hello.
Olivia. Yeah, hi, Issam.
Hello? Hi. Yes. Thanks, Joseph. Thanks, Gideon. It was a really informative seminar, as always. I want to ask a question. So, just to contextualize my question, I'm Palestinian. I'm from Nablus, and I've lived there for 15 years. Now, you always, and that's not the first time you've stressed this, but you say this a lot in your speeches, that there is already a solution, which is a one-state solution. You just need to make it democratic. So you're kind of advocating a more or less snap move into a single state with equal democratic rights for everybody. Now, this might sound a bit cynical, but I think if that happens overnight, we know for a fact that there is great animosity amongst the Palestinian population to Israelis and Jews, and vice versa. I'm no political analyst by any stretch of the imagination, but I think under such circumstances, at best, you will have great civil unrest. Sorry. Now, great civil unrest, you won't be able to get functional government, etc. And at worst, you'll have a repeat of 1947, an all-out civil war. So my question to you is, are you not worried about that, especially as a Jew, but also as an Israeli and as a citizen of this region? Are you not worried? Thank you.
I'm extremely worried, Issam. What do you mean? For a moment, I have no illusions. This cannot happen overnight. But first of all, I must remind you that before South Africa became a democracy, there were the same voices who spoke about a bloodbath, that all the white people will be murdered and killed and all their property will be robbed and it will be horrible. All this didn't happen. And again, I don't compare because we are dealing there with a very small minority and here with two equal peoples. It's almost impossible to foresee it, for sure. What do you mean? Right now, if you do it, it will become a terrible bloodbath. Sure, it's not possible, but we cannot judge the future according to the present. If you mean that to take the present and to turn it into a new reality with the same base, sure, it will not work. This takes some efforts, international and domestic. First of all, it takes the conclusion that there is no other way. We have to reach a situation in which Palestinians and Israelis will understand that there is no other way. And not only that there is no other way, that any alternative will be much more bloody and terrible for everyone. And the world has to explain that this cannot go on. And it will be a mechanism, but don't judge it according to the present. Sure, if the present will continue the one-state democracy has no chance. The idea is to change things. Again, it's not a fair comparison, but I remember the days before Anwar Sadat came to Israel, and he was portrayed in Israel as, I mean, almost as Hitler, as a horrible, horrible enemy of Israel. And within weeks, Sadat became an Israeli hero almost. People were in love with him. People started to travel to Egypt like crazy, and all of them were amazed with what they saw. Yes, this is not a fair comparison because the Egyptians didn't live under Israeli occupation. They didn't went to all those humiliations and told them terrible, brutal reality. But we have to start somewhere. And by the way, if you take Palestinians and Israelis from the same backgrounds and put them in a room, it's amazing for me to see again and again how much common language they can find if they come from the same background. I mean, take students from here, students from there. There is something in common also. The problem is that, yes, it's not only hatred, by the way, it's also fear. It's a combination of hatred and fear in both peoples. Very justified. I can't tell the Palestinians love us. You have no reason in the world to love us, no reason in the world. By all means, you have only reasons to hate us. But the idea is to create something new. How to do it? When will we do it? We have to start with at least a vision, because the two-state solution is even not a vision. And the one-state solution is a vision. We have to start with something. Right now, people say, listen, nothing will work, nothing will happen, and we'll continue with this forever. That's the worst.
All right, let's go next to Olivia, Dawn, Miriam, and Gideon. One more person join. Is it okay if you ask?
Sure.
Let's go to Olivia.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for your time with us, Mr. Levy. I've been reading your articles for many years, for decades, I'm sure. And in your reporting, in your words and between the lines, I have always noticed a profound, a passionate commitment to a thing called justice. And that is very courageous. And it's personally, I find it uplifting. And what you say about Haaretz, I absolutely agree. I'm a reader of many newspapers, but I'm certainly not a journalist. It's unique. It is a unique paper in its outspokenness, in its criticism of the Israeli government. They don't mince their words. They are very outspoken. So it's a wonderful, wonderful newspaper. I think it's about the best, really, that I know, and I know many because I live in Europe and read lots of European newspapers. Right, I'll try to be brief because there are other people that want to speak to you. My question is geopolitical, and it's about Saudi Arabia. Now we know the Saudis have been trying to, sort of edging towards signing an agreement with Israel, and it's in the interest of both, really. Israel would like to broaden the coalition against Iran and Hezbollah, the Saudis too, and the Saudis want to buy all that wonderful surveillance technology to survey their, spy on their own citizens and all the best trade. And they've already, you're far more knowledgeable than I am about this. There's been lots of meetings, secret or unofficial, et cetera, it's no secret. They've opened their airspace to Israeli flights, et cetera. And now, the Wahhabi bunch of people, I mean, these are, the Emiratis and those other medieval type people that signed agreements with Israel excluded the Palestinians. Palestinians were humiliated for the 500th time, just excluded. And some countries haven't, mind you, Algeria and Iraq, and one or two others haven't gone along with the Emiratis in signing agreements with Israel, but the Saudis would want to. Now we know that the Saudis, they want a change as far as attitude to occupation and all the horrific things that are happening. And is there any hope? My question is very simple. Is there hope on the horizon that the Saudis would would be leverage, would put pressure on Israel because they both want an agreement, would put pressure on Israel to change, to better the lives of Palestinians. They've been making their lives miserable for many, many years. Is there any hope on the horizon from your point of view?
It's quite a tough one because on one hand, I'm not sure that the Saudis care so much about the Palestinians. And so do the Emirates. And it would be very natural for me to be against those peace treaties with the Emirates and Bahrain, regimes which we all don't like, and above all, leaving the Palestinians bleeding on the side of the road. But I must tell you, after one visit in Dubai, first of all, I realized that they are much more serious people than I thought, at least at the Emirates. And I met quite many people from the foreign minister and down. And they told me one thing, look, for 70 years, we were taken hostage, as they say, by the Palestinian issue. Did we help to the Palestinian by this? No. The Palestinians didn't gain anything by this, that we were boycotting Israel. It didn't improve the situation of the Palestinians in nothing. Maybe through creating mutual interest with Israel, maybe this will be a tool. I don't think that they will bring peace, neither Saudi Arabia nor the Emirates. I think that the real key is in the hands of the Americans, at least for the time being. It might change, the world is changing, but right now it is still in the hands of the Americans more than anyone else. But I cannot be against any kind of peace which might be a promise for the Palestinians. I know one thing, all those years of boycott didn't contribute to the Palestinians anything. I know many Palestinians are very angry at anyone who speaks like me now, because they hate the Emirates now. They really feel betrayed in the terms that the Emirates ambassador told me he cannot go to Al-Aqsa because they will attack him there. And maybe rightly so. But by the end of the day, maybe a more peaceful Middle East will also bring Israelis to fear less the Arabs, to appreciate them more, to know more, to realize that they are at least as equal human beings as they are, and in many ways even more. I can tell you, Israelis who go to the Emirates come back quite shocked, because in many ways the Emirates are by far more advanced than Israel in few things. Yeah, this confuses Israelis who are really exposed only to the terrorist with the knife or to the street cleaner. That's the only Arabs they know, or the constructor.
Yeah, okay.
To tell, look, there is no one answer on it. It's very complex, but by the end of the day, I think we shouldn't oppose any kind of peace agreements. We shouldn't oppose.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Olivia. Let's go to Don Raphael. Don. And then Miriam, and then Sean, and that's it.
Yes, Mr. Levy, it's a great honor to share this time with you today and with all of you in this Zoom room. I'm convinced that here in the U.S. Jewish community, there is a significant majority that does not support a failed Israeli apartheid policy. It is contrary to many of our progressive values. Maybe it's a blind spot in our progressive politic here. Maybe it's a lack of education. But my question is, how does that voice here in the US get heard by the Israeli politic who claim they don't care what we say and insult us And more importantly, I'd like to know your view. How do we mobilize here in the US? Because there is a strong voice that does want to be heard. It gets sort of shouted out by the Hasbara and loud voices that speak first. So I'd like to hear your view on that, and thank you.
The big hope is the fact that Israel is very worried from those voices. And that's a source of hope because they understand that this can be a game changer in the United States. It is a process, it will not happen in one day. Still, the conservative, bipartisan attitude toward Israel is still very, very deep-rooted. But the new voices, I can tell you, are accepted by official Israel, by the foreign ministry, by the prime minister office. They are very worried about it. And they try to fight it. And they are fighting it in all kinds of ways with the Jewish lobby. And they have some successes. And politicians, very promising politicians, pay a price for supporting Palestine or supporting justice or supporting the international law in the United States. But there is a change, no doubt about it. We should encourage it as much as we can, as much as you can. Because by the end of the day, it is your society, it's your representative, it's your legislators. Try as much as you can to support them. Right now, it is a very promising beginning, but it's just a beginning. I don't have any illusions that America will change its policy within few months or few years. Look, we had Barack Obama. I mean, we had so many hopes. I really believe that his heart was in the right place. I'm sure he knows the truth. I'm sure he did a comparison between the black slavery in the United States and the Palestinians. And finally, he was one of the most supportive American presidents to the occupation, to Israel, supplying more weapons than any other president. So it's a long way to go, and it's in your hands to try as much as you can. I know it's very hard because the machinery which stands in front of you is very efficient and very powerful.
All right, let's go to Miriam and then Sean, and then we end. Miriam.
Okay. Right, I'll try to make this as short as I can. I can't help first though thanking Mr. Gideon Levy and also thanking Haaretz, which is my favorite newspaper in the whole world. My question is about BDS. Well, first of all, in Israel, there were Israeli movements that were boycotting the settlements long before BDS came along. They weren't that well known maybe, but they were there, and I was certainly supporting those. And in the South African situation, I don't think people had the sense that they were supporting one group against another group. I think it was an international boycott to get justice in South Africa. Whereas BDS, I think a lot of people associate it with supporting the Palestinians against Israel. Israel is the enemy. And I think that's why a lot of people that might have participated in some kind of boycott, but not the one that's called BDS with the buzzword BDS, because that's associated with being enemies of Israel, and people don't want to associate with that. And so I guess my question is, how do the organizations in Israel that originally had their own boycotts, how do they feel about BDS kind of taking over everything and becoming the buzzword when a lot of people associate BDS with a Palestinian movement that ultimately is aiming for what a lot of people see as the destruction of Israel as a Jewish state? I'm not saying I object to that, but a lot of people do. And I hesitate to say I support BDS because then people will associate me with that enemy of Israel kind of label.
Yeah,
You don't?
I totally share your question marks and your hesitations. And still, for me, it's very easy to support BDS. I do it openly, above all because, as I said before, it's the only game in town. It's not always exactly the game that I would like to have, rightly so. There are many who are using BDS even for anti-Semitic emotions, but I don't think BDS is anti-Semitic as an organization. Don't forget that it's not also a very established organization. It's something a bit fluid. And by the end of the day, the means and the causes are justified. And without those means, we will not reach anything. And we can support BDS and still not support everything BDS does or says. I want also to add here another point. In Israel, the progressives would be in favor of boycotting the settlements. I think this is hypocrisy. We cannot boycott only the settlements because there is no separation between Israel and the settlements. And this game in which we feel so good about ourselves because we don't buy products from the settlements, look, for me as an Israeli who lives in Israel, I cannot talk about boycotting Israel because I live here. And I buy Israeli products, and sure, I pay taxes to the Israeli government. I have a choice of going to exile, which I didn't, and I will never do because of all kinds of reasons. But I think that this game that there are the bad Israelis in the settlements and the good Israelis who don't deserve sanctions or boycott or whatever is a little bit problematic because there is no separation today between the settlements and Israel. Israel is supporting the settlements. Israel is financing the settlements. The IDF is defending the settlements, and the Green Line is dead long time ago. And this separation is very, very artificial, which makes it harder because many liberals and many Jewish liberals, members of the Jewish community in the United States, would like to boycott the settlements, but not boycott Israel. I think this is impossible. So to sum up, BDS has some negative elements in it, but by and large, as an organization which shows the direction, which takes the right measures, I think that's the best we can ask ourselves now, because I don't see any other alternative. One thing must be clear. It must be the end of the era of talkings and condemnations. It must move into actions, because Israel learned to live with all the condemnations and all the talks and all the threats. Now it's time for actions. And the only organization right now who really offers actions is BDS.
All right, let's go to Sean. Sean Czar. Sean, he will be the last person, and then we'll end it here. Sean.
Okay. For Mr. Levy, you said there needs to be more awareness among the Israeli following what the Israeli media is telling them, and they believe it. They are so devoted to what the media tells them that if you try to tell them different from what the media says to them, they portray you as a biased person who is trying to delegitimize Israel. How are you going to get Israeli to be more open-minded than what the Israeli media tells them to believe?
Mission impossible. I'm trying it for over 35 years now, and I'm a huge failure. It doesn't work. It's very hard to work against the media because it's not only the media. It's a wall-to-wall interest not to know. Nobody wants us to know, and nobody of us wants to know, because by the end of the day, it's much more comfortable to live in denial. You really think that it's very pleasant to be an Israeli living in Israel, serving in the army, and knowing that the Israeli army is killing children? or killing innocent people on a daily basis recently. So it's much easier and more comfortable to believe in those lies and to believe in this fake information that we are getting, which has only one purpose: to protect us with confronting the reality.
Are they aware that there's going to be some comeback to this?
Consequences?
Yeah, consequences to this.
Yes and no, because on one hand, for 55 years, we are being told that it will explode one day. And it does explode from time to time, but the prices are reasonable. And until now, Israel is just stronger than ever, and the Palestinians are weaker than ever. And when I have a real nightmare, it is the vision that the Palestinians will end up like the American natives, totally forgotten, losing everything. For many years, I thought this cannot happen. Something will happen and the occupation will collapse finally, because history told us that in most of the cases, this is the case. But as time goes on and the world loses interest and the Arab world loses interest and Israel is getting stronger and stronger and the Palestinians are getting more divided, lacking leadership, totally isolated and lonely, I start to be afraid that maybe there will be no consequences. Where are the consequences? I'm waiting for them. They don't come.
I hope so too. Hope there's not going to be, yeah. Well, thank you.
All right. Okay, we are going to conclude for today. I want to thank Mr. Levy for your time and your sincerity and the elaborate way that you answered. I think that we are all enriched by your responses and by your observations. They're very, very wise, and I think that it is helping all of us to understand the conflict. From my personal point of view, I am now even more convinced that the best way to resolve this is to create a common government, because I think that the Israeli government and the Palestinian government will not be able to propose a common government. It would be a democratic system within Israel and Palestine that neither the government of Israel or the Palestinian government will be able to oppose. And I think that it is, Gideon said that's the BDS is the only game in town. I think that our movement to create a common government is another game in town. True, it's not well known, but it will be. So, Mr. Levy, I want to thank you so much for participating, to helping. It's very, very generous of you to come in and be so responsive. We have a lot more to speak in the future, hopefully. And I know it's getting late in Israel, and I want to thank you so much for being with us. So thank you, and we're going to conclude for today. Thank you.
Let me just
Mr.
thank
Levy.
you.
Thank you, Gideon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And tell all of you that meetings like this really recharge me with hope. So please go on with what you are doing. And BDS is not the only game in town. Your organization is the next thing.
Yes, and Gideon, you should run for the Prime Minister.
You too keep going
You
with your
should run for the
wonderful
Prime
journalism.
Minister.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And hope
Thank
to
you
see you
again.
again.
Be with
Hope
you.
to see you
Stay
again.
safe.